is underway. Stamps his authority once again.
My word, this could go wrong.
On the brakes, goodness me, what a launch.
Look at that.
It just all comes down to this. Okay, right, hello, ladies and gentlemen, welcome along for this evening's action. Of course, we will be around the American circuit of COTA. My name is Joseph Black. Of course, as per usual, I'll be taking you through the action here tonight, and alongside me will be Owen Boldero. Owen, I mean, we've had the majority of the season. Now we are heading towards round number 11 of 14, and Andriy Chenkovan is 48 points ahead of Ethan Shackleton at the top. So it's very much looking like his title, and he'll be able to get even closer to sealing it today, won't he?
Yeah, hello, Joseph. And we're ready for a brilliant race at COTA. But yeah, as you said, Andriy Chenkovan now being 48 points ahead in the Drivers' Championship. I mean, it would take something special from Ethan Shackleton with 4 races to go. For him to take the title, he'd need to outscore Andriy Chenkovan by 12 points a race. So if you work that out, he would need to finish by basically win every race. And then Andriy Chenkovan would need to finish about 4th place in every single race. So it would take something special for Shackleton to win this title. But those two will be working together out there tonight, because there's another championship on offer for them to win tonight, potentially.
There certainly is the constructors, and they are currently... I'll actually bring this up because we've got the opportunity to talk about it now when it's a little bit quiet on circuit. They are currently 145 points ahead of Mercedes. If you work that out, that's basically a point a race. So that's just a very, very impressive gap that they've been able to eke out so far. And I haven't quite done the maths on it just yet, but it does look very good for them to win it this evening. I don't think they're going to work together. I think that now the full focus will be on the Drivers' Championship. But you can see we've thrown it straight to the constructors rather than the drivers. But we have Ferrari, then Mercedes, Racing Bulls, 70 basically behind this, 68 to be specific, the most left out number in the history of numbers, I fear, ahead of Racing Bulls, and then Aston Martin 8 behind McLaren, still a little bit behind them, and that looks like a very interesting fight towards the end of the race, as does the fight for 6th place between the Williams team and the Kick Sauber team. And yeah, it's interesting fights all the way up and down the constructors, apart from at the top, which could get decided tonight. Going over to the drivers, we've done it in reverse order today, but we'll get it all out of the way before the formation lap, or before the outlaps have been completed, although a number of drivers already on their lap times. We'll flick over to them in a second, but it is only the installation lap, the banker lap, so it doesn't really matter all too much. Andriy Chenkovan 198 points at the top of the standings, Ethan Shackleton at 150, so he's going to be 48 behind. Paul Garung is now looking closer to overtaking Shackleton than Shackleton is to overtaking Andriy Chenkovan, and Dan Riley is 20 in behind the Aston Martin. Then if you look a little bit further back, Stephen Snell, who has left the league, Burt Welly in 6th place, Stuart Towers in 7th, and Carl Stewart Woodard, then Connor, and then Jack Weaver with a race ban here today, so he will not be competing here at COTA. He rounds out the top 10. Benjamin D, who I had a bit of communication with during the week about his decision to leave APC and all these sorts of things. He came into one of my TikTok lives, to be perfectly honest with you. He is in 11th place, and then Brian Moore, Lucas Aracini, Ollie Matthews, and Harry Jennings. And Ollie Matthews, well, he's listed as an APC reserve there. He's going to be able to claim full-time status, and I've made it sound like he's an immigrant. He's coming over to APC, and he's staying in APC on a full-time basis, and he has made the switch to racing full-time with he will be racing full-time with Aston Martin, so he'll be alongside Paul Garung. So very exciting times in APC. A number of new drivers ready to, or a number of drivers ready to fight, and a new driver ready to fight full-time with everybody else. At the moment, he finds himself second place in the standings behind Dan Riley, and now he drops down to 3rd as Andriy Chenkovan sets the gauntlet down with a 1:32.553 to kick off his qualifying session.
Yeah, and it's really good to see another driver in that Aston Martin. It's going to add an element of competitiveness to the Constructors' Championship. I mean, Paul Garung has done a really good job fighting on his own thus far. But of course, now with Ollie Matthews coming in, that is a very, very balanced pairing, I'd say. They're both of similar pace, so they will probably be around each other on track during races. They'll be able to work together pretty well. It's a very, very balanced pairing, like what we see with Andrea Chenkovan and Ethan Shackleton, and a pairing that, if it stays into next season, could challenge for a constructors title potentially.
Certainly could. Paul Garung's been showing that improvement as well throughout the season that could make him a championship contender heading on to next year. And the first of, I believe, 2 APC seasons in 2026, which is soon to get underway, or details will follow shortly. I say soon to get underway. Time flies, and it feels like very, very soon when the next season of the Almost Pro Championship will get underway. And well, it'll be all down to this man as to when it does get started. Kyle Stewart Woodard, and well, he finds himself without a lap time so far, 8th in the standings, and he's only 6 points off Stuart Towers and Burt Welly, who are joint on points, and Stephen Snell not too far ahead of them as well. So really, really good opportunity for the likes of Kyle, the likes of Stuart, to pick something really strong up here today if they can adjust to the circuit of the Americas well.
Yeah, definitely a circuit which quite often throws up some surprises. I know Kyle has had some pretty decent results here. I believe it was a win he got in season 5, I want to say. It was somewhere around that era, so quite a few seasons ago now. But a circuit he has had success at in the past, as he now will come to the final 2 corners to finish his lap. And McLaren here could get a good result. I mean, Connor looking decently fast here. What about his brother Kyle? Up to the line comes Kyle. It's going to be a 33.8. So a tenth faster than the other McLaren, and going to be running together on track again, potentially.
Yeah, and Slipstream can come into full effect. Of course, they do work together on the circuit, the 2 McLarens. Lots and lots of swapping around that they've done this season. In terms of trying to gain competitive positions, they've done just exactly that. And it's very much worked out in their favour on a number of occasions. Even if it just means gaining 1 place, because every little gain, especially when you're working together as a team, is a huge, huge difference that can be made. And if you can gain maybe a 1/10 of a second on somebody else in a lap just because of the fact that you've worked together with your teammate, that can really bring you benefit in the long run. Kyle Stewart Woodard and Connor at the moment will be qualifying next to each other on the grid, 4th and 5th. So Kyle on the 2nd row and Connor on the 3rd. But there's still a lot of laps to go. Paul Garung having not set one just yet. And, well, Ethan Shackleton not having set one either. Neither of the Williams have appeared tonight. That's going to be a huge one in terms of the fight with Kick Sauber. And, well, the team comprised of one driver with a race ban, Jack Weaver, and another one who hasn't set a lap yet of Brian Moore. This is going to be a huge race for just Brian in terms of trying to fight for the constructors.
Yeah, definitely. It's an important one for their constructor standings, and that race ban for Jack Weaver after the optimistic move, we'll say, on lap 1 at Singapore is a big blow to their hopes. But luckily, they still have a couple of races left, and with it being a pretty close fight at the moment, and with both Williams not being here, it's a chance for them to gain a few points, which otherwise they wouldn't have had.
Certainly is. Guaranteed points for every single finisher here today, so that is a huge opportunity for him in terms of the constructors, also in terms of the drivers. He's on 31 points. If he gains 2, he gets past Benjamin D. If he gains 8, then he goes level with his teammate. 9, then he will beat him, and he will go ahead of his teammate for the first time since Jack Weaver first overtook Brian, and I don't remember exactly when that was, but I know that was much earlier on in the season, and Brian's just been struggling to catch up. He and Lucas Erracini is a battle that looks like it may well start across the course of this season. But let's ride on board with a completely different topic. Ethan Shackleton, of course, still fighting to keep that championship alive, 48 points in behind. This is going to be a lap of the circuit of the Americas. Heading through the first sector, it's loosely based on the Senna S's. Herman Tilke, the designer, basically decided to try and make the circuit as good as possible based on all of the elements of different circuits that he's liked in the past in the first sector, attempting to be replicable at least of the Senna S's, if not a slight improvement on them at the moment. Not too bad. It's a tricky technical sector that will lead you down to sector 2. He's basically tried to rebuild Brazil is what I'm saying, because the third sector is very similar, just with longer straight like this one right here, which is going to be a prime overtaking opportunity into the braking zone. But we've just seen Ethan Shackleton head through. Then the final sector, which is where we're going to be seeing the majority of side-by-side action, because they will make the moves down the straights with the DRS pretty comprehensively. But as they go down, through the final sector, if they haven't quite got the move done yet, then they will be very much fighting for it. They feel as though it's very much on with how open and expansive the final sector is. Now Shackleton coming through the tricky last two corners that will be make or break in terms of laps in qualifying here today. And he'll come out on the exit of the final one, and it'll be a 33.864 for Ethan Shackleton on his first run of the day.
Yeah, and not too bad lap time there, but for a title fight he'll be needing a little bit more than that to keep his hopes alive. I mean, at the rate we're going at the moment, Andrea Cenkvan could have this title wrapped up pretty darn soon, as Ethan Shackleton, by the way, I don't know if you're on board with that, has just done a half spun, very nearly went into the wall, just about managed to keep it out, but he's going to need more than that to keep up with the two runaway drivers at the front. Good time to go on board with Dan Riley, because he has 3 temps up.
Yeah, good time to go on board with Dan Riley as we just watched Ollie Matthews begin his next push lap. And Dan Riley around the final corner. Saraceni was also up, but lost 3 tenths in the final sector. What can Dan Riley do? He can go fastest of all. He can improve on anybody's time by 2 and a little bit tenths. That is a strong statement from Dan Riley.
Cenkovan's going to take it back.
He might have a lot of pace here today, but so, of course, will Andrea Cenkvan, who's just set an absolutely barnstorming lap. A 1:32.0. And while Dan Riley found 2 tenths on Cenkovan's previous lap, Cenkvan has just found 5.
Yeah, unbelievable. I literally flicked on board to Andrea Cenkvan straight after Dan Riley finished his lap, and it said in the top right corner, 4.5 tenths up. I was like, wow. I knew that was going to be quite a special lap. Ollie Matthews retiring there. Clearly doesn't feel he can go any faster, and I mean, he's half a second off Dan Riley in second place, and he is a second clear of Kyle, who is in 4th place, so he's pretty much in no man's land, and if he doesn't feel he can go much faster than that, or fast enough to take any positions, then retiring makes a little bit of sense. Save a set of tyres for the race, maybe you get a late safety car, and that set of tyres actually becomes relevant.
Certainly might well do, and I think that's the only real explanation that you can have for that one. Paul Garung, this is the first time he's been out on the circuit and trying to set a valid lap. He's really not at the races here today for whatever reason it may be at the moment, without a lap time and finding himself at the very bottom of this field, of this 9-car field. But now he heads out on a lap and tries to beat Andrea Cenkvan first time. I'm not sure how successful this is going to be, but of course Paul Garung, he's proven me wrong on many occasions this season, and he's going to try and do that once again here at COTA, heading through down towards the second sector. Of course, we have no indication as to how good this lap actually is, but we will wait and see when he heads up to the line how good, because I forgot to check the sector times, I'll be perfectly honest with you. It looks decent, it's purple, but of course the game likes to give credit where it's not necessarily due, and make sure that drivers get credit for purple sectors when they haven't quite been setting purple sectors, as this is Paul Garung now. The final sector beckons, and he is going to be coming across the line with, I think, a pretty decent lap time is what this one is going to look like around the final 2 corners then for Paul Garung. And around the final one, is this going to be an improvement? And if so, how much of an improvement on any of the other drivers' times? It is indeed. It's going to be a pretty good lap, all things considered. A 32.397, but he's got to get round quick to make it in time for a final run.
Yeah, I think it's too marginal for him to get another lap in. He might just about get a lap in, but it's so marginal. I don't think he will get another one in personally, but I could be wrong. And I mean, considering his position, although he's very close to Dan Riley, so if he can get in, he will want to get in and then set another lap time, but it's not as if he's going to be under much pressure from behind, with Ollie Matthews, of course, retiring, and then Kyle being a second and a half off his lap time. And no offense to Kyle, of course, but it would be very, very, very amazing if he found a second and a half on his final run. So if he didn't get another lap time in Paul Grung, it wouldn't be disastrous, but of course, with how close he is to Dan Riley, he'll be wanting to get another one in.
Of course he will. He will want to eke out that advantage over the man that did briefly, very briefly, hold pole position before Andriy Chenkovan found a huge chunk of time on his lap. The final runs will get underway very shortly as Andriy Chenkovan thinks he's done enough for pole position. Is this a bit too cocky from the Ferrari? I don't personally think so, unless this circuit is degrading and this circuit is upgrading as much as it may well be able to do. COTA is a very, very good circuit in terms of in terms of how much it improves across the session, which is why we were able to see Dan Riley find a lot of time on his lap, why we were able to see Chenkovan find a lot of time on his lap, why we were able to see Paul Garung just barnstorming it out of the gates. So I think there may well be time in these laps, and I think this is the best opportunity anybody's going to have of taking P1 off of Andriy Chenkovan at any point in the session today.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's getting more and more overcast as we speak, so I do wonder if that is a part of why Andriy Chenkovan retired, or he just feels he's pretty much set the perfect lap that he can't go faster in this session. I mean, he's on pole by 2 tenths, which is a decent enough margin, but Dan Riley very well could pull something special out of the bag. We've seen him pull some special laps when it matters, so it's going to be very interesting heading in to the final laps of qualifying. And I mean, I believe Paul Garung will just about get enough time, as I see his car coming out of the pit lane, so he will get another lap in, but he's going to have to cut some corners to get round in time.
Yeah, certainly he's going to have to be very close. 1 minute 10 on the clock, and it's going to be very, very tight, I think, as to whether he's going to be able to set a lap or not. Paul needs to really push on this outlap, and that can't be the perfect preparation. It's not the perfect preparation for when you need to get out there and set the best lap of the weekend for yourself. So Paul Garung going to be very, very close. He's in the first sector and he's got 50 seconds to go. He's not cutting it that much, as I say that he's straight lines. So he's cutting it a bit, but I still don't think it's going to be enough, as that's going to be Kyle into the wall in the final sector. Somehow no damage, but Kyle Stewart would have just driven into the wall in the final sector, and well, he'll be so pleased that we were able to catch that on stream. Heading over to the final runs then of this qualifying session, we're going to watch on with Ethan Shackleton, of course, 6th place. He will not be happy with that one. He'll be hoping to find at least a second and a half if he wants to challenge for the top 2 rows of this grid. Ollie Matthews is on that second row of the grid, but a 32.8 is the best that he's going to get, and Shackleton improves by 1.6 tenths in the first sector, but invalidates coming out of the exit of the S's, and that's Shackleton's evening done. Well, also, Brian Moore, his evening has been ended as Kyle Stewart has decided to retire on track after that poor moment out in the final sector. What can Luca Saraceni do? He will be the first driver with a valid lap so far. He's got at the moment a 35.2. At the moment, he's found 5 tenths of a second, which will take him closer, but not quite close enough in terms of overtaking Connor Stewart-Woodard in the standings, and maybe even trying to challenge with Ethan Shackleton now for the top 3 rows of the grid. This would be huge if Saraceni is able to out-qualify Shackleton, and it would really put a nail in the coffin of the Ferrari's championship charge. Around the final 2 corners then comes the V-carb, and what is Luca Saraceni going to be able to do? Brian Moore and Paul Garung cannot do any more, nor can Chenkovan, Riley, Matthews and Stewart-Woodard, and Luca Saraceni runs wide out of the final corner and improves, but not enough to challenge Connor, who is on a barnstorming lap of his own, but he's invalidated. So Connor not going to improve, Ethan not going to improve, and this is your grid for the Almost Pro Championship American Grand Prix.
Yeah, no one really finding much time, or being able to find the lap, I should say. They found the time, but not the lap. They didn't quite manage to hook it up, and I think that could have played a part when it comes to conditions. They definitely had an effect, because although the track was cooler due to the overcast conditions, it also probably affected their tyre preparation, with the tyres probably being a little bit colder going onto the lap, and maybe that's why they struggled to keep the laps valid.
Yeah, Paul Grung especially would have struggled, and as I would love to bring up and mention the grid for this evening, but the game has decided to go completely blank on me, so I'll go straight back to the
The good
title
old
card.
black screen.
Not an issue I've had all too often on F1 25, but I know it's very, very common. But yeah, we've black screened. We cannot take you through the qualifying grid, so I will be able to bring it up to you. Be able to bring it up to myself to read it out at least in just a couple of moments' time. But yeah, we're heading back to the session, and a lot of drivers are going to be thinking about this session, and they're going to be thinking about the race. There is lots and lots of opportunities for the drivers to see what they can do. We're going to cut down to trackside now, and well, we have not many opportunities of this season for drivers to stamp their authority. And Ollie Moore actually says that he crashed on his lap and he had half a second on it. Just reading the YouTube chat now. Thank you to those of you who are always interacting in there. It's always very good, and I know Ollie is very, very good on that front. But it's Chenkovan who's going to be on pole position. He's going to be alongside Dan Riley and Paul Garung in third place. Fourth goes to Ollie Matthews with fifth. Heading the way of the McLaren of Carl Stewart Woodard, who didn't lose out too much from that mistake that he made in the final sector of the formation lap. Or not formation lap, but his formation lap all by himself. His outlap is the word I was looking for. Ethan Shackleton will be lining up alongside him. A disappointing qualifying for the Ferrari in terms of trying to keep his championship alive. But of course, the Ferrari Constructors' Championship is very much on for today. Connor Stewart Woodard qualified 7th. He will be lining up alongside Lucas Aracini, who couldn't pull the last lap together, and he invalidated on his final run. Then rounding out the field will be Brian Moore, who will be trying to fly the flag for Kick Sauber here today. It's looking like a very enticing race here at the Circuit of the Americas, and well, a number of drivers who are looking to stamp their authority on the final few rounds of the season, and it's looking very much like we may well have a championship sealed on round 11 here today. What an achievement that would be for the two Ferraris. They've got a race to try and sort themselves out.
Yeah, and of course, as we mentioned a little bit earlier, it's not the only championship that the Ferraris are going to be focused on. They'll both be squabbling over the drivers. Of course, Andrea Chenkovan has had the edge over Ethan Shackleton, not only this season, but also you feel last season as well. But the question is, where does their mind go? Does their mind go to the constructors today? Or does their mind go to the drivers? I have a feeling that their minds will be focused on the Drivers' Championship. So if there were to be a time where Andrea Chenkovan and Ethan Shackleton were together at the front, I get the feeling we would see a big amount of fighting, because of course Ethan Shackleton cannot afford to drop any more points. If he drops any more points, that is just championship over, I believe, as he will have 3 races to gain what would be a deficit of over 50 points, which is just, well, Andrea Chenkovan would need to retire a couple of times for that to happen, as here we are onto the formation lap.
Onto the formation lap indeed, and it's the first opportunity we get to see the drivers' tyres, and everybody on a set of the mediums. They've all gone very similar in terms of their strategy, and well, I mean, the data that I've got isn't necessarily reliable here, because of course I've got data from the top level drivers, and of course this is the Almost Pro Championship. This is the not quite top level drivers, so I'm not sure what the strategies will be here today. I've tried to make predictions over the last few weeks. I've been very wrong. So it remains to be seen what the drivers will do today. My knock of confidence, I think it's fair to say, in my strategic calls. But of course, I know that it's not necessarily down to me, but it's down to all of these drivers out there. Of course, the preparation that the drivers will have for the esports races potentially fast to comes. They've got a lot more time, I think, than a lot of these drivers here. But some of the drivers had the opportunity to come and speak to us before the race about how their preparations are going and how their last races went as well. And well, I won't dive too deeply into Carl Stewart Woodard's, but he has bought the same mic as me, so hopefully he'll be sounding just like me here today. And of course, he does stream his races, so you can go and watch that for some entertaining reactions, I think it's fair to say. He's quietly optimistic about the race around the Circuit of the Americas, and he said that it's a good opportunity to get points on Stuart Towers in the championship. Of course, Stuart is not racing. He wants top 5 here today. He's got top 5 so far, and he's going to hope to seal this one very, very shortly. And I'd say a few short laps of time. It's not necessarily a few short laps of time, but it's going to be a decently strong race, I would imagine, from him. And then Lucas Erosini, who came in. He loves COTA, hates driving it, and he'd like to get to top 8. And at the moment, he is in the top 8. And if there's any retirements, he will be able to achieve his objective. And, well, we will see what the drivers are able to do as they roll up to the line. And give me your early race predictions, Owen, before we've gotten going. Or don't, that's absolutely fine by me as well. The final drivers are rolling up to the grid, and we will get the opportunity to watch them.
Sorry, my mic wouldn't unmute.
That's all right. It's all good. I'm sure that we'll get the opportunity to speak about it at some point during this race, which is about to get underway. The 5 lights are going to come on in front of the drivers. Chenkovan and Dan Riley on the front row of this field. The lights are on. The drivers are ready. And the action's underway. Chenkovan with a delayed launch. Dan Riley with an unbelievable one. He's going to pull alongside into the first corner. Who's going to have the edge? Heading into Big Red as it's 4 wide for P2. Carl Stewart has an absolutely rip-roaring start. He goes up to second place as Dan Riley leads the way. Chenkovan's had a terrible start, and he drops behind the McLaren, might drop behind the Aston Martin as well, who tries to sweep through on the Ferrari, but cannot quite do so. And it's Dan Riley who holds an unbelievable lead at the top of this field. Almost a second he's eked out so far. Kyle in second, and I think it's fair to say, didn't think I'd be saying that in just a few moments ago.
Yeah, what a start from Kyle. What a bad start for Andrea Chenkovan. Exactly what he wouldn't have wanted, because now he has Kyle ahead of him, who we guess would probably be slower than Dan Riley, and that is proving to be true currently, as he is out in danger of dropping out of Dan Riley's DRS after half a lap. Andrea Chenkovan not going to be close enough to go for a move there, so he's going to have to sit behind for another lap. But what a start from Kyle, from 5th place all the way up to 2nd.
Yeah, huge start. He likes COTA. He's won here before, and he's just trying to cling on to the DRS of the leader, Dan Riley, at the moment. Of course, these two with their fair share of incidents. So if they are able to come back together onto the circuit for the battle for the lead of the race, it will certainly be a spicy one. We're going to end the first lap with Dan Riley in the lead of it, and Kyle Stewart would have 1.2 behind. So no DRS on the first lap, of course, and it looks like no DRS for Kyle on the second lap either. That could be huge, as around here, DRS is so important in terms of making the overtaking opportunities. And now Chenkovan is going to try and make it stick on the McLaren into the first corner, and he's able to make his way through. And Kyle will be desperate to get back through, and he will pick up the DRS on the Ferrari as they head out of the first sector.
Yeah, Andrea Chenkovan just using a little bit more ERS on that straight there than Kyle. I don't think Kyle was actually expecting a move there. It's not really a place you see most people favour to go for the overtake. Generally, you see them go for it on the second DRS straight, because of course there is less opportunity for the driver being overtaken to fight back, because of course they have a second DRS straight on the lap if they overtake in the first one. So I think he probably caught Kyle off guard a little bit, and he's now dropped out of DRS. Is now Andrea Chenkovan going to go for it on Dan Riley as well and take the lead here potentially.
Yeah, you could see exactly why Andrea Chenkovan felt the desperation to get through on Kyle as soon as he can. He knows he has pace. He knows that Kyle doesn't necessarily have the ability to stack it up when he's trying to fight with Dan Riley. And, well, of course, he's made his way into the lead of the race, and that was a short-lived pipe dream for Kyle in terms of holding on to that second place, and also in terms of Dan Riley holding on to that race lead, as it's now going to be a battle, I think, for that second place as Chenkovan looks to stretch his advantage. Dan, I think, made him angry at the start of the race by being able to eke out that gap, and you don't want to see Andrea Chenkovan when he's angry. On to lap 3 then, and Andrea Chenkovan has a 7/10 advantage over Dan Riley. Paul Garang 1.2 behind, and that gap is only getting bigger. Carl Stewart Woodard has dropped down to 4th place, so it hasn't necessarily been the best of the last few laps that we've seen of Kyle after that unbelievable launch. Maybe he just got a bit complacent, and he has found his match in the rest of the drivers on this field. He's got Ollie Matthews on his back, who's been complaining of throttle problems. He says that he can't quite go to 100%. Well, he's not doing too badly here today as he tries to cling onto that DRS. Paul Garung pushing to try and stay within the DRS of Dan Riley as well, but it's been an electric start in the first 3 laps. So much has changed, but somehow we've basically got the same grid we've qualified.
Yeah, things just staying as they were in the race at the moment. I think people are probably going to be settling down into a rhythm a little bit. It looks like some people are just sitting about 8 tenths behind at the moment. I think that's probably a bit of more of an optimal gap than sitting right behind the car in front of you, because of course the closer you get to the car in front, the heavier the dirty air you'll be picking up, and that will have an effect not only on your grip but also the tyre degradation and their life. I mean, there are some arguments in this game to say that being in dirty air is actually more favourable for your tyres. I've heard some people high up in the game say, as you don't push as hard, but that's one for the pros to talk about and not me to talk about. But a very interesting debate nonetheless.
Not necessarily something I've heard. I've actually heard stepping out of slipstream is going to give you a benefit because of the extra couple of tenths of a second that it will give you down the straight. That's my view, at least, as somebody who claims to be an engineer, hasn't engineered for the last few weeks. So maybe the game has changed. It does like to change on a dime, but as far as I'm aware, it's not necessarily going to be the... yeah.
Ollie Matthews has just lost his front wing end plate. He smacked the back of Kyle and has lost his right-hand end plate into turn 1. I think Kyle's braking caught him a little bit off guard, and he hit the back of Kyle and has lost his entire right end plate. So that is probably going to be an early pit stop, because, I mean, a missing right-hand end plate is going to affect you, especially not only in dirty air, but also in the circuit in general, as it is quite a right-hand heavy circuit.
Certainly is, and I mean, we switched over to those 2 drivers out of the first corner, so I'm not quite sure how I missed that, but now Ollie Matthews going for a move on Kyle, trying to maybe give him a little bit of payback as he goes to the inside line. Is able to make the position up nice and easily, and now Ollie, I don't think he's going to come in here. I think he's going to try and stay out and make his strategy work. Of course, these mediums aren't going to last all too long around this circuit, and so they're just going to try and make the full advantage of the tyres while they still can, I think. And it's going to be interesting to see whether he's going to be able to keep pace even when the tyres start to go off. Is he going to come in on this occasion? Yes, no, maybe. I don't think he could quite decide, but he has finally made the decision. He is going to jump into the pit lane, and Ollie Matthews makes an early stop here, and fair to say he's probably not very happy about that one.
Yeah, not what he will have wanted, and that is him on a 2-stop strategy nailed on. Hards are not going to be doing 23 laps, so he is probably going to be in about 13, 14 laps time for another set of mediums, so him committed to a 2-stop there. But I'd just like to quickly throw it back to what I said about dirty air and tyres. I think that is the difference of obviously you coming from a world of esports wheel players and me on sort of esports controller players. I feel like on this game, especially in sort of the lower leagues, it feels like if you're not behind a car, your tyres are going to be... It feels like because you push on harder, I think it's best to say when you're not with a car in front, you use more of your tyres. But when you've got a car in front of you, they act as almost a pacemaker. So you sort of follow their line. And if it's somebody on wheel, maybe their lines are going to be a little bit more favourable. At least that's what I feel like, because tyre wear on controller on this game is unbelievable. It is the highest I've ever seen it on a sim racer game that can be played on controller. It is absolutely unbelievable. Like, there are some circuits which are a struggle to make a 2-stop work on, one of them being Britain Reverse. Reverse is an absolute joke on tyre wear. It's, for some people, over 10% a lap, which is just absolutely mental. So as I said, I think that's probably the difference between sort of the 2 different sides of the F1 community that we come from.
Oh, and the controller apologist, as always, sharing his opinions and voicing the controller side of the community, which is getting weaker and weaker as the years go by. I know I was a controller player back in January, and I didn't blame anything on the game. I just thought it was a major skill issue because I didn't really know the difference. Still don't really to this day, but it is what it is what it is. As we only have one driver within the DRS, is going to be Dan Riley, who's going to be trying to chase Paul Garung. Paul was able to make his way through on the previous lap time. Dan is going to try and get back through, but he hasn't quite had the overspeed just yet. Did go on board with Paul Garung with potentially the worst camera angle that we could have had possibly of that move, but it did show that Paul Garung was apparently... He'd apparently activated his pit limiter, so fair play, Paul, on making that move stick with that pit limiter on. 9/10 the difference between those two drivers, and Dan Riley now down into third spot, and hoping that he's going to be able to cling on to the DRS of Paul Garung as much as he can, because he knows it's going to give him an advantage in the long run. He's just about 9 and a bit tenths back, but I think he's going to be outside of the DRS on the next zone, and he is indeed, as we are going to be getting a move further back down the field. If I can press the right button, then that's going to be Lucas Heracini through on Brian Moore, so potentially a mistake coming out from the Kick Sauber, which has allowed the V-Carb right into that fight, and it's fair to say that fight may well be said and done now, with them just really trying to take the opportunities that come to them. Points are not necessarily a rarity, but the points that they're fighting for at the moment are much further down the field, and this is the difference between 6 points for 7th place and 4 points for 8th. And when they're fighting with each other in the championship as well, that can really up the stakes, and they feel like small points, but they are very, very big in terms of their impact.
Yeah, definitely. And the thing is, of course, with Brian being the only of the Sauber drivers tonight, and there not being a single Williams, that 6 points that you get for 7th place is going to have a much bigger effect than it would have ordinarily, because that is, of course, a 6-point gain. But I mean, if you look at the championship, Sauber are 7 points behind, so that 6 would make that 7-point gap into a 1 point. Oh my god, holy voice crack. A 1-point gap.
Yeah, a 1-point gap would be a huge advantage that they can eke in, and really make it tighter heading into the last few rounds of the season. That cannot have been a serious voice crack. That was
genuinely, that was an honest voice crack.
Anyway, Dan Riley's picked up a 3-second penalty.
Anymore. I never have voice cracks anymore. That is unbelievable that I've just had one that big.
I don't ever remember having one, to be honest. I sort of just grew up and my voice went deeper in the span of like a day. Anyway, Dan Riley, 3-second time penalty, and into the pits comes Lucas Heracini. So maybe, just maybe, Ollie Matthews didn't miss the pit window by too much. 2 laps on the hard set of tyres. He's going to be hoping that's going to be not too bad for him. And yeah, we'll wait to see where he is going to come out in relation to Lucas Heracini. He's going to be ahead, way ahead, as he heads down to the first corner. And Heracini held in the box. It wasn't necessarily a very good stop for the V-Carb, but he's going to be out back onto the circuit now. He's going to be out in plumb last position, but he's going to have the undercut on the man that he was fighting, Brian Moore. So still opportunities are rife for the V-Carb in terms of trying to fight for those small points gains that I talked about and Owen squeaked about. And now I'm being given the silent treatment. He hates me.
Sorry. I'm having real issues with getting my microphone to unmute for some reason. What were you saying?
I made a joke about about the voice note, about the voice crack, and this. I said I was talking about it, and then you were squeaking about it. It wasn't really that funny on reflection, but I found it funny. So it's, that's the main point.
That's getting put on the soundboard 100%, because that was an awful voice crack. That wasn't even like a small one. That was a bad one. That's probably getting put on the APC soundboard.
That's if we can get more. That's if we can get more things on the soundboard in the first place. It's full, and Kyle's too protective over some of the things on there. So maybe you will avoid that fate for at least another day.
One can hope.
When he decides to buy more boosts for the server. But yeah, anyway, lap number 9 of 28 here today, and it looks very much like it's Andrei Chenkovan's race to lose. He's got a 4-second gap over Paul Garung, three and some change. So it's looking very much like he's got a very strong opportunity to win the race and extend his championship advantage, which is exactly what he's going to try and do as we head on to what will be lap number 9 and Chenkovan's in the final sector. Lap number 10 soon. The race is kind of flying by, and Andrei Chenkovan at the moment is very much on top of it. Nobody in the DRS at the moment. Dan Riley's dropped out of it on Paul Garung. Now it's just down to where can Ollie Matthews and Lucas Ericini come out with those undercuts.
Yeah, the undercut for Ollie Matthews is going to be pretty big, but the thing I do wonder about is how big is the tyre offset going to be that those ahead of him are going to have. I reckon probably we're talking about 15%, maybe a little bit more. So it's going to be interesting because he's probably on the... No, he's nailed on the two-stop. He's on the two-stop strategy. So it's going to be interesting to see what others are going to do. I think if you can drag those mediums to about lap 12, then the one stop is definitely possible. But it all depends on sort of what kind of state your tyres are going to be in now.
Yeah, it's all crucial at this point of the race, and every single lap that goes by, of course, with the way that strategies have been so important this year, every single lap that goes by is an important one in terms of protecting your tyres. As of course, this game has exemplified the need for strategy more than any other. Is it down to the lack of ability to overtake? Yes, that's not the point. It's elevated the roles of people like me as a race engineer, so I'm not going to complain too much about it. Allowed me to create a YouTube video that gained me 4 subscribers, made me got me over 100 views. Not going to complain about that one. I was very proud of that video, but it just demonstrated. Sorry, I didn't mean to sniff into the mic there. It just demonstrated the need for strategy more than ever before, and it'll be an interesting dynamic to watch heading into F1 26. And of course, no DRS. How important strategy will become. So it's good that these drivers are able to get the data now, to get the practice in now, for when I'd imagine it becomes ever more important into F1 26.
Yeah, well, of course, with the disappearance of DRS next year, there is, of course, going to be the push to pass button, which will be replacing it. Hopefully, that will create a little bit more racing in more than about 2 zones per circuit. So hopefully it will have a bit of an effect because, of course, the push to pass button, from what we know, can be activated anywhere. So F1 26, I'm actually quite excited for F1 26 because with it being a new set of regulations, a completely new set of cars, I mean, they couldn't be any different to the ground effect cars if they tried. We're going from standard static aero and ground effect floors to floors like the 2017 to 2021 era of cars and active aerodynamics. So it's going to be very, very interesting. I mean, current predictions say that they will be 2 seconds a lap slower than the current year's cars. So 2025 cars, they'll be 2 seconds a lap slower than. So roughly around the pace of what we started it with these cars in 2022. So it's going to be very, very interesting because this is probably the biggest technical regulation change of the V6 era.
Yeah, it's very exciting, isn't it, to see what they will cook up for next year in terms of basically everything as far as F1 is concerned. Slightly concerned about some of the things that have been coming out about it as well, but that's not the point. We're going to try and keep it positive because of course, try and keep everything positive in terms of F1 because the majority of it is overwhelmingly negative. Ollie Matthews trying to get into the DRS now of Dan Riley, who did come into the pits on the previous lap time. We failed to mention that we were too deep in the real-life F1 drama. Drama is a bit of a harsh word, but Dan Riley came out just over a second in behind Ollie Matthews, ahead of Ollie Matthews even, and now it looks like he's warmed those tyres up and he's going to be able to stretch that advantage, showing that Ollie maybe that going for that undercut hasn't quite worked out for him. As into the pits comes Kyle Stewart-Woodard now, and this will be a great demonstration because he was in and around where he was. He actually overtook him on the lap that he came into the pit lane. So we'll see really a demonstration of how well that sort of undercut that he was forced onto is going to work out. Ollie is going to be out ahead of Kyle Stewart-Woodard, but by how far is he going to be able to stretch his advantage over the McLaren? He's going to be able to stretch it a decent amount. It's at least one position with Brian Moore able to get through on Kyle, and it's now a 10.5-second gap, so a pretty decent advantage that he's able to eke out.
Yeah, 10.5 seconds is no small a distance, I think it's fair to say, and that will be very important come the end of the race. I mean, he can just sort of relax now. If he's got 10.5 seconds behind him, that is a very, very comfortable gap.
Certainly is a decent gap that he's going to hope to hold, but of course new tyres and the pace on them is pretty good. It's been interesting to watch the difference between Ollie Matthews and Dan Riley. I think Dan is quicker in some segments, but there's some segments where Ollie's able to at the very least, match him. So it's not too big of a tyre deficit just yet, I think. I think that's going to come in the next few laps where that is going to change. Andrew Chenkovan comes in, so lap number 13 is where they pull the trigger. You said they needed to stretch it to lap 12, and it's lap 13 where the top three pull the trigger. Shackleton is going to double stack in the Ferrari, so maybe just a case of miscommunication between the team, and well, they're not going to be communicating at all, I don't think, when they're in a championship battle. Out comes Shackleton onto a set of the hard compound tyres. He's going to try and go to the end of the race, and I don't think he was too heavily affected by that double stack.
Yeah, I don't think he lost too much time on what you were saying about communication. They probably aren't communicating, and it's probably a good thing, because it could get a little bit feisty if they were on track together. And it's also a good job that they're not in McLaren, because let's be honest, even in game, McLaren would probably try to micromanage the championship as hard as they physically can. I mean, I'm not trying to get political about the 2025 season, but McLaren have micromanaged the championship to absolute death.
Oh, I'm not going to pass my comments because I don't watch enough F1 to comment. So, look, listen, I can basically watch the qualifying and go, okay, that's it. But yeah, I mean, feeder series are on top, and you should watch all of my videos about feeder series that I create as well. Shameless self-plug. Lap number 13, and Ollie Matthews is now on the back of his teammate, Paul Garung, which is going to be interesting to see how the two teammates interact on circuit for the first time together as teammates, of course. Garung and Ollie Matthews. Matthews has made it full time and joined Garung in that Aston Martin seat in the green machine, and we'll see how that team dynamic works out. Everybody's team dynamics are slightly different. Of course, we know exactly what the McLarens do, and it's not necessarily micromanaged. I don't think they are quick enough to micromanage the championship, but what they are able to do is micromanage the positions that they're in, and we basically see team orders every single week. Wouldn't be surprised if we see them again here today, with Connor only just off the back of Kyle, and maybe just some DRS swapping that is going to come into effect halfway through this race, and we've seen everybody into the pit lane at least once in this Grand Prix so far, and the number of drivers on the last lap, I think, have got the strategy right, are going to go for that one stop, but of course Ollie Matthews forced onto the two stop, and I think Lucas Saraceni going for it as well, as that's a 3-second penalty for Shackleton, which it brings me back, actually. I'm going to have a mention of the penalties while we still have the opportunity to. 3 seconds for quite a few drivers in this field. It's not necessarily been the cleanest, but of course, in Sector 1 is not necessarily the easiest sector to traverse, keeping it nice and clean. 3 seconds for Riley, 3 seconds for Shackleton, 3 seconds for Connor Stewart-Woodard, and 3 seconds for Brian Moore, as we get another onboard view, and it looks like Ollie Matthews is in the pit limiter again, so I'm not sure what's going on with that OSD at the moment. But yeah, and then Lucas Saraceni, always struggling, it seems, at the moment with keeping it within track limits. He has picked up 9 seconds worth of penalties, so I think he's just now at the moment not worrying about points. He's simply just worrying about the way that he's going to drive out on track. Of course, he's been trying to develop his skills as a no assist driver, so we'll see how he progresses. But yeah, it's looking at the moment as though he's just focusing on his on-track performance rather than his off-track results.
Yeah, no assists has certainly not been kind to him so far. I assume you're talking about Luca. I was fighting with my microphone again. There's something really weird going on with the audio port at the moment. I really don't know what's going on, and that's the issue with the mic that I keep having. I heard no assist driver though, and so I'm assuming you're talking about Luca. Am I correct?
Indeed.
Okay, good, right. Yeah, I just had to check. Yeah, I mean, he's had struggles. It's definitely fair to say. We've seen that span across the entire season, but there have been some flashes in the pan of what you can expect from a no assist driver. Of course, no assist is far more advantageous than running assists, especially traction control. It's very strange because last game there was virtually no difference in pace between full traction and no traction, and this game the difference is night and day faster for no traction drivers. So once he masters no assists, we will see him shoot up the championship.
Certainly hope so. I like to see drivers get rewarded for that hard work in driving with no assists. I don't necessarily like it when drivers drive with assists. That is coming from somebody who uses line, but I use line because I don't play the game enough, so I don't know all the circuits off the back of my hand, and also I'm very rusty as soon as I do pick up the game, so I'm of course needing that little bit of assistance. But those drivers who drive week in, week out, it's not that I don't think there's any excuse, it's that I think that they're trying to create an excuse and a reason to not work as hard, I think it is. And so I fully commend Lucas Seracini on the season he's attempting to have with the no assists, and I do very much hope it pays off for him. He's had flashes of brilliance, as you've said. I mean, he's had the pace in a number of races to hold a candle to those at the very top, but it hasn't been on a consistent enough basis that he can find himself in any decent position in the championship at all. And at the moment he finds himself basically at the bottom of it, but with still plenty to play for over the last few rounds of the season. So yeah, it's decent season, all things considered, from Seracini's perspective, even if he may not agree with that verdict. We are coming towards the latter stages of this American Grand Prix, and it's been a very, very good American Grand Prix, I think, as we've seen absolute carnage at the start, I think it's fair to say. And now it's evolved into more of a strategy battle, which are the kind of races I like. And 12 laps to go, it feels like the majority of the drivers will not come into the pit lane again, but the likes of Ollie Matthews, he will, and he will come storming through the field at the end.
Yeah, Ollie Matthews, of course, as you say, has to come in again. So we'll be on those medium tyres. I expect him in probably either lap 17 or lap 18, one of the two. I mean, personally, I'd probably be looking at lap 18 if I was him. I mean, his hards will comfortably go for another couple of laps, so he can do it. And I mean, 10 laps on those mediums with less fuel on board as well just sounds a little bit more appealing than 11, and definitely he can just push on to the end without any tyre worries if he sort of just lengthens this stint out a little bit.
Yeah, which of course he's going to have the opportunity to try to do so, at the very least, just outside of the DRS on his own teammate. No teamwork coming into effect here today in this final podium position. Paul Garung, I'm sure, feeling as though he can cling on to the hopes of being with the top two. And, well, maybe even getting through on Dan Riley, who of course has that 3-second time penalty to his name. So Paul Garung keeps it clean towards the end of this Grand Prix. I can't see why Paul Garung wouldn't be able to hold on to second place in this Grand Prix and pick up yet another impressive performance in the season that he is having. Ethan Shackleton, I think today it's not been the greatest of races once again for the Ferrari driver that appears to be fitting the second driver mould, and well, hopefully he will get the chance to fight his way up. But of course, you never quite know, and it doesn't look as though Shackleton is going to have that late race burst of pace.
Yeah, it's just, I think, in the last couple of races, we've really seen the championship fall away from Ethan Shackleton. I think Andrea Chenkovan's pace in the last couple of races has just been so dominant that and with Ethan Shackleton having a couple of slightly weaker races than he did at the start of the season, he's just sort of slipped behind a little bit, and I think this is definitely just the final nail in the coffin to that question, and it does sort of beg the question now, with the improvement of the likes of Paul Garung, can Paul Garung challenge for a title next season? We've seen him hold a candle to Andrea Chenkovan in the last couple of races. Of course, he won one very recently, so it's going to be very, very interesting heading in to next season.
The driver dynamics, always one to speak about, and Paul Garung here today is looking as though he may well be a championship contender for the next season of the Almost Pro Championship, which of course is, you know, it's not too far off now. We are not just talking about the end of this season, we are looking on to the next, and it will be in early 2026 is what I'm being told, but of course you'd know a little bit better than I would, being an admin of APC, when the next season is going to begin. But I mean, listen, it's going to be something that we're going to miss, and hope that, as I have my voice break of my own, don't remember the last time I had one of those. Genuinely think it might have been something along the lines of 2023. Anyway, it's interesting. Don't know what this evening is going to be about, voice break wise, but either way, we are looking like it's going to be a very interesting scrap here on circuit. This is going to be for P8 and P7, and P7 is currently what Connor Stewart Woodard holds, but maybe not for much longer, because Lucas Erasini is showing very, very strong pace, and the V-Carb may well look to get past. As you said earlier on, it's an unconventional overtaking zone into the first corner, but Seracini may well just do it. Connor defends to the inside line. Seracini looks to sweep around the long way, but actually breaks early, tries to get the switch back on, but I think takes too much curbing, so compromises his exit. But Connor, he didn't have the greatest of exits himself, and Luca makes his way through. He takes P7, and he sets his sights on the other Stuart Woodard.
Yeah, a very, very good move there from Luca. He's starting to find his feet now in this race after a bit of a slower start to the race. He's starting to find his feet, and I mean, he's on older tyres than the two ahead of him, but his pace wouldn't suggest that. I mean, maybe he's just found something in the last few laps, found a rhythm, found a groove, a way to drive the track. It can be something as simple as that in a race like that, this around Kota. Just finding that line that suits your driving style can be so advantageous and can help you so much, as Connor goes back through there with the DRS, but Luca's going to fight it back.
Certainly is. Luca has to back out for the time being, but it's very much a scrap that is massively, massively on at the moment, and he looks to the outside line, maybe into the next braking zone, cannot quite find his way through, but he's able to pull alongside Connor. Not the greatest of exits from the McLaren, but this is a very, very hard fought scrap out on circuit for P7, and Seracini now on the outside line, heading into the penultimate corner. Bit of a tap as he tries to get the braking and the turning done early, and Connor was on the apex, so it's all fair and square, and out onto the final corner once again. Seracini is going to pick up that DRS, and he's going to hope to get through into Big Red once again. And once again, Connor defends to the inside, and it's a rinse and repeat of last time. Is Seracini going to break early and turn in? No, he's going to try and go around the outside. He's going to spot that Connor is going to try and defend that move, and Seracini makes his way through out of the first DRS zone. You'd imagine that this isn't going to be it over as they come up to the second DRS zone on the straight.
Yeah, they're now coming towards the second DRS straight of the lap, as you say. And although Luca was gaining a little bit of time on Kyle there last lap, he's lost some since he has been battling with Connor over the last sort of half a lap or so. Apologies for coming in a little bit late there, but something to watch. Oh my god, what is going on with voice cracks today? This has just been the stream of voice cracks, but something to watch towards the top is Paul Garung has eked a little bit closer to Dan Riley. He was about 5.5 back 2 laps ago, but is now about 4.8. He needs about 1.8 seconds, I believe it is, to get back into penalty range. Yes, Dan Riley has that 3-second penalty. I didn't know if it was 6, but it's not. So Paul Garung needs about 1.5 seconds to get himself that second place, which I believe we roughly touched on earlier.
Yeah, certainly did, and I'm still watching the fight out on circuit, the first fight that we've had in a few laps, between Saraceni and Stuart Woodard. And it looks like it may well continue on into the first corner. And indeed, it will. 9/10 back, though. I don't think Connor's going to be close enough to make an attempt on Luca Saraceni. Indeed, he is not. And so it looks like Saraceni has finally confirmed this position. But yeah, I mean, second place for Dan Riley is looking good at the moment. I mean, you say he's only got 3 seconds worth of penalties. 3 seconds worth of penalties so far. And of course, 3 mistakes, suddenly you're up to 6 seconds, and I wouldn't be surprised if he is on 5 right now, because it's always like you have to live on the edge with penalties, and it feels as though, this might be my perspective at least, I only really care about penalties when I'm 1 warning away from one.
I mean, I'm always wary of it, because I always like to try and keep a 100% squeaky clean record on track limits. Of course, that's not always possible. There are some circuits that are just genuinely really hard on track limits. Of course, me being a controller player, there are some circuits which are just stupidly hard to keep it within the white lines. One I always struggle with is Qatar, and that's one I've always struggled with. And then there are a few others, like Mexico has been one I've struggled with in the past. Not so much this game, I feel, but that's because I suck at Mexico this game. But track limits are always an issue. As I say that, Paul Garung picks up a 3-second penalty to end that battle between him and Dan Riley for that second place, for now. But of course, there's nothing to say that Dan Riley might get that another 3-second penalty to make it 6 seconds worth, and that battle could be reignited. So one to watch there.
I've read the script, and it looks like he may well do. But no, of course, I have no idea whether Dan Riley is going to get another penalty or whether Paul Garung's going to be able to get close enough on this circuit with only a few laps to go in this race, about 6, when Chenkovan will cross the beam. So about 5.5 maybe, to give it a little bit of grace. And it's looking like, I mean, it's looking like an overcast day. Are we going to get rain? Probably not at this point in the race, but it has just about stayed away on this circuit. And I think if we did get rain, it would cause absolute carnage. It's not been something we've been we've been averse to over the last few races at APC. As Connor is going to go for it once again on Luca. There is scrapping out on circuit, and again it's these two. Connor braking so much later to try and take the advantage, and he has done. These two have had a very respectful fight so far. The only bump they've had, as far as I'm aware, is the little bump into the final corner that Saraceni gave Connor Stewart Woodard when there was a bit of miscommunication. But other than that, it's been a squeaky clean battle and a very, very good one to watch.
Yeah, nothing wrong with a little bit of contact here and there. You know, it happens in racing. As long as it's nothing major, it's not going to be the end of the world. But as you said, yeah, it's been a really, really respectful one. I mean, it's unfortunately not for position because, well, Luca Saraceni has 12 seconds of track limit penalties versus Connor's 3 seconds. So it's not going to be full position, but it's a good old scrap to watch nonetheless.
Certainly is. Love a bit of respectful racing, even if it is ultimately going to be completely pointless. But yeah, I mean, these two are having good fun out there, I think, and that's the most important part of league racing. We've got to take a step back occasionally and make that realisation. Something that I've discovered, and something that is going to be good fun to watch, is that we've had a certain somebody sign up to World Online Racing, of course, where I'm quite a prominent member. I didn't mean to sniff into the mic again, my apologies. Where I'm quite a prominent member, quite a prominent commentator. Mr. Brian Moore has decided that he's going to take a step into commentary in the esports world. I'm very interested to watch that one. But yeah, I was surprised when I saw his name. I asked why was he there. He said he's got to fill his time, so fair play. But yeah, I mean, shameless plug for World Online Racing, just like I did a shameless plug a couple of weeks ago for APC on the World Online Racing broadcast. And well, Paul Garung has been able to breach 3 seconds, but it doesn't matter anyway, because as I said, I've read the script. Dan Riley picks up another 3-second time penalty.
Well, I mean, at this point, we may as well just start calling you the playwright. This is some Need for Speed Payback type of scripting. I don't know if you've ever played that game. Brilliant game, by the way. Wildly overhated, in my opinion. But just touching on Brian and commentary. I have done a lot of commentary with Brian. We commentate our own league together, and I've done various other leagues with him. He's a pretty good commentator. I'm not 100% sure how he's going to be on his own because I've only really, heard him commentate whilst, doing co-coms with him. So it'll be an interesting one for sure. And I mean, WOR is a much bigger step up than our own league. So good for him.
WOR is never solo. You've always got a co-commentator there. And if you don't, then they cancel the broadcast. But yeah, I mean, it will be interesting to see. It's generally, and I'm going to go into the specifics of commentary here. It's really weird to commentate with somebody for the first time. Yes. That's what he's going to have to learn, especially as they've come from an entirely different world. Because if he gets partnered with somebody who, for example, used to race esports, it's going to be, I think, a bit of a culture shock because it's basically an entirely different game to the one that you guys play on. It's a lot more serious. It's not really a game for a lot of them. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be very interesting to see how he copes. And I know that it was a big culture shock when I made my switch over from casual leagues to esport leagues, I did it quite quickly. So my first proper co-commentator was an esports commentator, still does World Online Racing Tier 3. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting balance to strike. And I think it'll be good fun to watch him have a go at developing because it is basically an entirely different skill where we can be a little bit more chatty and relaxed here, but there it's a little bit more locked in and focused.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm aware of that sort of world because I actually have done a lot of commentary outside of motorsports. I've done various random things. The most random thing I've ever done is I did a competitive Pokemon tournament, and I can tell you the skill for competitive Pokemon is much, much different because to commentate something like that, you actually need to know the game. You actually need to know it to be able to commentate on it because it's a turn-based strategy sort of thing. So I'm aware of sort of the more locked-in style. So yeah, as you say, it will be interesting to see how Brian performs because, as you say, it's a lot more serious. And I mean, commentary is a weird one. It depends on the style of commentary you're doing. It's a bit like TV commentary, like what we're doing now, is much different to that of radio commentary. I mean, in radio commentary, you need to paint the picture far more than you do in TV. I mean, when it comes to TV commentary, you can just let the pictures do the talking, in all honesty, and you just sort of talk about what's happening. You don't need to actually paint the picture, whereas on a radio commentary, you need to really, really tell the listener what's going on so they can almost see what's going on in their head.
Yeah, it's trying to paint a picture that doesn't quite exist for them, which is why I'm not going to do radio commentary anytime soon.
How it got explained to me, because I'm studying sports journalism at university, how it got explained to me by a radio commentator for rugby is it's like talking about a painted picture to a blind person. You have to really give so much detail. That's how it was explained to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something I've ever attempted. I've only done, I've done different games that I haven't really had an idea about because I've done lots of Apex stuff, and then I've gone, hang on, I've not played Apex since 2022. What am I doing? But I didn't do badly actually. In the end, I thought I did all right. But it's a very different. It's very different every single game you go onto. I will say I mentioned the locked-in thing, but about a minute into the broadcast that I did on Monday, yesterday, which was the top tier of the day, which was like the kind of the flavour of the day in terms of watching PC racing at least. I made a joke about the commentator I was replacing owning a Virgin, literally less than a minute into the broadcast. Because his internet was down, and I said that he was having problems with his Virgin.
Nothing wrong with a joke.
Nothing wrong with that. A minute into the season, but yeah, I mean, listen, I've made worse jokes. I've probably made worse jokes on these broadcasts that I've forgotten about.
Well, there was one last week, wasn't there? That was
Oh no.
pretty diabolical, to say the least.
Which one was this again? I've forgotten.
This was about Dan Riley. I'm not going to say what it was, but I'm sure you remember it.
I don't remember it.
Do you not?
No. I don't remember this at
It
all.
was in the post-race interview. I'll tell you after the broadcast.
Boring. Anyway, tell you what's not boring. This fight between Connor and Luca has been genuinely very, very good, and they're still continuing it out, which is why we've watched on with the V car for so long, and we've watched the McLaren trying to get past, and then the swaps, and it's very, very good between these drivers. I think I'm just so good at quips now. I'm just really smart and cool and funny that nothing really goes into my head.
Only
or maybe
glazed.
maybe it just all goes to my head from the sounds of things. But yeah. Anyway, this has been sorry. I said it was an interesting strategy battle. Nobody's come into the pits again, so it's been kind of boring. But we are now onto the final lap of the race. We are here. We're at the end of it, and that's why we've gone on such a tangent about Brian commentating. And we have still very strong battles for this 7th and 8th place. They're in the final sector, and not Luca Saraceni, but he's still in this fight for P7 and 8 as they still scrap it out on this circuit. It's been very, very impressive to see these two just going at it, and the focus, the mental determination they've had to have to keep this one going is so, so impressive. But the mental determination of this man, Andrea Chenkovan, who is heading on to the final 2 sectors of his Grand Prix, has to be commended. The way in which he's won today is so, so dominant. The fact that he dropped to 3rd place off of the start and looked threatened to drop down to 4th place, and then the fact that he came back and the unbelievable pace that he had. Kyle was over a second off of the back of the race leader at the time, which was Dan Riley. It was a gap that was bridged in basically no time by Andrea Chenkovan, and so that was genuinely impressive to see, and that is a champion's pace and a champion's drive that he is going to be putting in. He is very, very much dominating this championship. He's very much going on to most likely break more and more records in his APC seasons that he completes. Every single race he looks to break another one, and he has come across the line to win here today in COTA, and what a victory he has been able to take, with a gap of 16.1 seconds after penalties are applied, which has been shortened down as Paul Garung comes across the line. It's 15.8 the gap at the end, and Dan Riley rounding out the podium just over in the end, just in behind. So that gap was not as big as it was at one point. Ollie Matthews jumps past Ethan Shackleton with penalties applied as well. And of course, this order could be shaken up all with the penalties, as every driver left does have penalties to be applied to their time at the end of the race. Carl Stewart Woodard will be the next driver across the line in 6th place. Is he going to be holding on to that, or is there going to be a swap for that position? We will see, as Connor is going to come around the final corner. That's going to be another penalty heading Luca Saraceni's way. He's not had the greatest of days in terms of penalties, but he's had a hell of a lot of fun fighting with Connor. Connor holds 7th. It's going to be Luca in 8th, and budding commentator Brian Moore will be rounding out the field in 9th spot. But it's been a decently watched race here today, and Paul Garung was he drove very, very well, but he just wasn't able to get over the champion. And it feels as though while Paul Garung is desperately trying to hold on to the coattails of Andrew Chenkovan, Chenkovan just seems to find the time to extend the gap again.
Yeah, well, I think today was vintage Andrea Chenkovan. It's what we've seen from him race after race after race. Ever since he came in Season 6, he's had performances like this where just nobody can touch him. There are so many moments like this that stand out to me. So, a brilliant victory, and one that goes alongside multiple others. And the more I think about it, surely he's knocking on the door now of records for not only, of course, most championships in APC, but surely he's coming up to most wins.
I'd imagine he's something along those lines now, as I'll run you through the finishing order as they celebrate their very well-earned podiums. And it's going to be the case that we are going to be seeing Andrew Chenkovan on the top step of the podium once again and again. This is kind of starting to feel like Hamilton, Verstappen, Bottas in terms of a podium. Chenkovan, Gurung and Riley. Ollie Matthews, though, looking threatening. He ended up in 4th, Shackleton in 5th, and Carl Stewart Woodard and Connor in 6th and 7th. Lucas Seracini in 8th and Brian Moore rounding out the field in 9th place to pick up points, and we'll get the opportunity to speak to Brian right now.
See, I almost had you.
Haha, we interrupted your conversation. Sorry, that was rude. I mean, it's just. Do you want to debrief that race? You were just doing it with Ollie. May as well do it with us now.
I actually wasn't debriefing the race with Ollie. We were just talking about the race start specifically, but it was an okay race. I mean, points are points. Only 2 points. A little bit disappointed. Could have been more, but on the hard tyres, I just could not get into the groove with them. I think I got 6 seconds once I switched from the mediums to hards. I didn't have any warnings on the mediums that I can remember. So, yeah, the hards did not feel nice at all.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And it was, I'd imagine, ultimately disappointing on a day where, you were going to be able to challenge for the championship in terms of the fight between yourself and Williams, with your teammate, of course, not racing, neither of the Williams racing. Does it feel like a missed opportunity at all?
Definitely feels like a missed opportunity. Obviously, going into the race, I can't remember how many points we were behind Williams. I'm trying to check now. So going into the race, being 7 off Williams, only being 5 off Williams now, feels very much a missed opportunity. Yeah, I was expecting more from myself, but it's just one of them races where what didn't quite happen.
Does it feel like something that can be overturned in the last few races of the season? Because obviously we're coming into the final few rounds now.
I'm feeling somewhat confident for the final few rounds of the season. Brazil next week. I really don't know what to expect there, but Qatar and Abu Dhabi. I've done a couple of races at both of them already on this game, and I know the strats there. I know what I'm going to be doing, so yeah, I'm feeling confident for the final 2 rounds, but not so much for Brazil.
Well, hopefully we'll be seeing you in a fierce fight for the points, of course. Owen, have you got anything for Brian?
No, I do not. Not on this one.
Beautiful. We'll let you go then. Owen, we're not going to let Owen go. He's not being sacked until the end of the season. We'll let you go, and we'll speak to somebody else. But thank you for your time today.
No worries, thanks.
Where are we going to go now? What order do we go in? We'll go with Kyle next. We'll sort of shake up the order a little bit. I don't know what it is about Discord at the moment, or this week specifically, but this is the second time we've cut somebody off mid-sentence. There's something to do with Discord. But yeah, it was an interesting race from your perspective, leading the little fight in the chase of the leader on the first lap, but didn't end up quite that way throughout the rest of the race. How was your how was it from your perspective?
Yeah, definitely disappointing. I mean, I had a great. For some reason, I always start well here. I think for the last 2 seasons that we've raced here, I've always ended up in P1 into the first corner somehow. We won't talk about last season. I think I span it in the 3rd sector on the first lap, so that was very unfortunate. So I think, being in P2, it was kind of mine to lose, really. Obviously not lose the race. I wasn't going to win, but it was mine to just not lose that many positions. So disappointed how easily people seem to come past me. As I said last week, I usually have pretty good pace here, so I'm usually quite happy with. I usually get decent results. I wasn't expecting a win. I wasn't expecting a podium, but I think even P4 would have been nice. So it was disappointing how easily people got past me. And the thing you cut off there was me talking to Ollie. I don't know how he held on. I'm sorry. I was adamant he was stopping again. I was like, I just got to manage the gap to him so that when he stops, he can't catch me back up again. I can't believe he made those last. I think he pitted lap 4, lap 5? I can't remember, but it was so early. I couldn't believe it. I was adamant that he was stopping again, and I had that one more position. So yeah, I think I feel like I should have had around Ethan Shackleton's pace. I mean, qualifying was okay. I invalidated the second lap, unfortunately, at turn one as well. So very unfortunate. But yeah, it was alright. I mean, it was quite boring after the stop. Once I started pulling away from Connor, kind of on my own, a bit lonely, But we, yeah, I can't complain about the position. This is points on Connor. This is points on Stewart. I think actually in the battle that I'm in, I think I probably would have got the most points. So quite happy with that.
Fair enough, and I mean that's debriefed the race pretty well. Actually, that's run through everything I had to say to you, Owen. Have you got anything to whoa, excuse me, to say to Kyle before we let him go?
I suppose we can ask about looking ahead to Brazil next week. Brazil always throws up some pretty good races in APC. Some of the best ones I can remember have been at Brazil. So, how are you feeling for next week's race?
Well, I don't want to get ahead of myself now because I kind of felt like I was going to have a decent pace here, at least be higher than I was. So I don't want to get ahead of myself. Obviously, last season was my best ever result at Brazil. So remember that podium? I was 3 tenths off the win. But it was down to the safety car that brought me back in. I had the pace to be there. Don't get me wrong, but I had fallen off quite early. And once I was out the DRS train. It was impossible to get back in. So the safety car brought me back in. And I was able to obviously get that podium. I think I was P4 after the safety car, and I was able to bat off of the podium. So, yeah, it's possible. Anything's possible, but it was a little bit lucky last season. But I did have the pace to be there. So hopefully, I don't lose the DRS train. Stick with the leaders, and we'll see what we can do. But I think after this race here, I think I'm really starting to realise how much I'm struggling with this game a little bit. So fingers crossed. We'll see what we can do. I'm giving up. I'm here to. I enjoy the racing, so hopefully I'll enjoy it and it'll end up being a good result. But yeah, I'm not going to be too optimistic about it. But yeah, hopefully it'll be fun.
Fair enough, of course. Hopefully it'll be fun. Brazil always throws up a good race, but yeah, thank you for jumping in today, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks very much.
And now we will go on to the next driver in our list, and of course we've gone in order of the positions, as far as I'm aware, at least, if I remember them correctly. And so then the next natural order is to go to Ollie, and that's the first person we've not cut off mid-sentence. The other two have been speaking to Ollie as I've cut them off. But yeah, Ollie, just debrief me on that one, because it was a weird race, I think, from your perspective.
It was. I mean, I was sending my teammate a message in quali and managed to get on some grass and crash, which is not ideal. But I wasn't finding enough time to gain positions, I don't think, so it wasn't the end of the world. And the race, really weird. Turn one, misjudged my braking, just not by much, but by enough to clip Kyle in front of me and give me kind of 40% wing damage on one side, which was enough to say, yeah, I need to box. And planned on the two-stop, but looked at my tyre wear, was stupidly low and just took them, and only lost the position on track to the Ferrari in the final sector, basically. And with his pen, I gained the position back. So, yeah. Well, again, what could have been, had I not got damage, I think I could have been fighting for second with Daniel and my teammate.
Yeah, unfortunate race then, but a promising pace. Looking forward to the next few races. Of course, you are now a full-time driver in APC. How are you feeling about the next few races and the rest of the season?
Honestly, I'm not feeling too bad. Kota's one of my weaker tracks, but there should be a couple of strong races from me. My disadvantage is that I suck at quali and race starts, so I have it all to do in the race. But I think that if I can make some adjustments and sort myself out, I can maybe, I don't want to jinx it, but get a couple more podiums, maybe even a win.
Well, hopefully we'll be seeing you up at the very top. Yeah. Owen, have you got anything for Ollie?
No, not on this one.
Wonderful. We'll let you go. It's common around here, don't worry. We'll let you go, and well, thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.
And now moving on to the man in P2, we won't get an interview out of the man in P1 unfortunately. But we never do from Andrea Chenkafan, the silent assassin. Instead, we will get the opportunity to speak to Dan Riley. And Dan, I mean, an interesting race from your perspective, I think, but a pretty successful one.
Yeah, I mean, on paper, it's my second podium of the season, so definitely very happy about that. I was really mega in qualifying as well, beating out both Aston Martins, which I think they were going to be a bit competitive. So yeah, good to beat them. Chenkovan was just way too quick today in quali and in the race. So yeah, it was unfortunate I couldn't really beat him. So it was just the race with the Aston Martins today. I heard Ollie had I think he had damage. I'm not sure what happened, so he pitted, so he was out of the picture. So it was just me against Paul Garong, and yeah, he just blew past me. So I had to get off the medium tyres, pitted, and honestly, surprisingly, they were honestly so rapid, and they held together so well. So yeah, I was able to jump in. Actually gained a very good lead. But then I just had penalties, and then I think he got another penalty, but you know, I got another penalty by my fault alone. So it's a bit unfortunate I didn't get second, but I think P3, I definitely needed a result like that, because well, I wouldn't really say I've had like a disaster season, but not as good as last season. So I think I needed a result like this.
Yeah, fair enough. I don't think it's been all too bad. Of course, still in and around the top four in the championship. If I bring it up now, you are indeed fourth place in the championship, and not by that much of a margin to those drivers ahead. So I think it's slightly hard on yourself. But yeah, I mean, it's not been too bad of a season in my opinion. But looking forward to the next few races, and of course, rounding off the season, it's going to be Brazil, Qatar, and Abu Dhabi. How are you feeling about those ones? I know, of course, your feelings on the last circuit, but just about the set of circuits in general.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't really say like Abu Dhabi, like it's not like my best circuit, but I just always seem to have pace there, and especially in race pace. I'm known for my quali pace, my one lap race, not for my race pace. Abu Dhabi is one of the circuits where I seem to have like unbelievable race pace. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. Qatar and Brazil, not really looking forward to it. I mean, Qatar, I did get a podium last season, but yeah, I'm not expecting podiums in Brazil and Qatar. I mean, I'll see what I could do, but yeah, I guess we just gotta just drive our best race, see what we could do, and maybe we can get a podium. I don't know, but yeah, we'll have to look forward to that.
Of course, we will wait and see. Owen, have you got any questions for Dan?
Nope, you covered it all, unfortunately.
Beautiful. Well, Owen's been useless in these interviews this evening. I think you have one question. Either way,
Yeah.
thank you very much, Dan, for your time, and we'll see you next week.
Perfect. See you next week. Cheers. Thank you.
And that'll be it then for this evening's broadcast. A very, very interesting race around Texas, where strategy was king. The first few laps brought the majority of the action, but Seracini and Connor Stewart would have brought it as well. Until next time, it is goodbye.
The action's underway. Stamps his authority once again.
My word, this could go wrong.
On the brakes, goodness me, what a launch!
Look at that.
It just all comes down to this.